Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Think Out Loud. Today I'm joined with Derico Symonds, right?
That's it.
Yeah, all right. So he's an activist, and before I go any further, I'll let him do his own introduction.
As Barry said, my name is Derico Symonds, born and raised in Halifax. I grew up in a public housing community. I'd say politically known as Bears Westwood community, but we know it as the Pubs. For the most part, a single parent family. I have two brothers, one older, one younger.
Yeah.
And basketball was sort of my thing. I played basketball my entire life. And I use sport really as a vehicle to kind of drive me to where I want to go. In terms of like educational background, I went to Mount St. Vincent University. I also played basketball there. I did an undergraduate degree in child and youth study, and then from there I sort of started my career working with youth in communities, and then I went back to university. Well, actually, not even really back. I sort of continued my career and did university part-time again to do a master's degree, Master's of Education and Counseling. And right now I'm involved in a number of different things, mostly around social issues and certainly affecting Black community. I work for the province of Nova Scotia, senior policy analyst, and for the Office of Equity and Anti-Racism Initiatives, very new office. I'm also a co-founder of three nonprofits in Halifax. One is called Game Changers 902. Another one is called ACE, Arts, Community, Culture, and Economics. And then another one is called CLT 902, Community Land Trust 902. Okay. That's sort of a brief.
Yeah. Thank you for that, man. So the first question is, what made you decide to become an activist?
Interesting question, and really I've really never named myself as an activist. Like it's almost like, if you're good at a sport, if you're good at something, other people will say that. Okay. And so people started calling me an activist because I was sort of speaking out against injustices that I would see, or pointing out things that were happening to community. And so, I'd say that it's really based in things happening in community, noticing wrongdoings that are happening, and understanding that my voice, everyone's voice sort of has a physical meaning when you start calling things out and change starts happening. And so I really realized that at that intersection of speaking out, talking about things, and calling things out in community was what kind of propelled me into this work. Because you can't be silent, you can't be complacent. Yeah. So that's kind of like how I got on that path. Is just how I grew up and noticing that there was a lot of things going on that I just can't be silent about. But I've never sort of personally called myself an activist. But although I appreciate it.
All right. The second one. All right. How do you protect your health and safety as an activist, and your voice as well?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question because like with myself and a lot of other folks that I'm involved with who are doing this work, it can be dangerous, and dangerous in a way that there's been a lot of racist threats. There's been a lot of DMs. There's been a lot of emails that people don't like when you're kind of continually speaking out and calling them out on their BS, really. And so, protecting safety wise, it's nothing that I'm really nervous about, but just more so aware that sometimes when you are calling things out, you kind of have a target. But in particular, it's important to practice self-care however you sort of do that. And for me, it's, of course, some basketball, but definitely gym, running, that type of thing. But overall, being aware, because when you're calling things out,
consequences,
exactly, there could be consequences, and even just at kind of towing the line with your employment too. There's just things that you have to be careful about when you're navigating the particular space, because some way, some shape or form, there are consequences for when you speak out.
So when pushing for a cause, right? How do you address different identities equally, like Black women, Black men?
First and foremost is working on behalf of the Black community in general, and not trying to sort of
differentiate.
And if we're being specific, then we'll be specific. Right? If there's issues that are particularly affecting Black men, then that's particularly what we'll speak about. But understanding as well too that the Black experience is not the same across the whole world. It's not the same across the entire city. Because often people sort of paint that picture. But just being sure that if you're being specific, be specific, but then also understanding that there's a lot of nuances as well in the Black community. And there's intersectionality, Black women, there's members of the LGBTQ2S plus community. And so, being careful, being sensitive, and but being real about it. And in terms of who the particular issues are affecting, and also educating yourself. Just because I'm Black doesn't mean I know everything about the Black community. So, and as well as the multiple identity that exists within, because things affect Black women differently than they may affect Black men, than they may affect members of the LGBTQ2S plus community. And so educating yourself and understanding the nuances, and then if you are speaking on an issue, be specific in terms of which group or identity that you may be addressing. But it's complex, it's messy, and that sort of thing. You might not always get it right.
Next one. So when activists say Black Lives Matter, what message are you trying to get across? And is it a social movement or is it a campaign?
So for me, I don't actually think that in some ways that Black Lives Matter is for Black people, because Black people always knew that their lives mattered. We always did. And so it certainly is to sort of validate and reaffirm and assert that our lives matter. But we've always known that. But this sort of the movement, it's both. I think it's both a campaign and a movement at the same time, because the campaign sort of marketing aspect of it infiltrates groups, organizations, cities, communities to then start a movement. So I look at it as a campaign first, and then movement second. But I really think that it's almost like a kind of a sad state of affairs that like we're saying the minimum, like our life matters, right? Like we're saying Black lives matter, and people are like, yeah, but like, and we're just saying that they matter. And so, like I think that it's both a campaign and both a movement at the same time.
Okay. Next question. How would you explain systemic racism in the simplest way possible to an unaware white person?
The simplest way possible is that, so at the essence of any system that we live, work, and play in today, in the inception of that system, any person of color was not thought of when that system was being built.
I like that, yeah.
So now, when we move into present day today, and we're explaining that, and we're saying that the system wasn't meant for me, the system's not working for me, it's based in the historical part. And so I have to mention the history first. And so then, simplest way possible is that ideologies, practices, ideologies that are ingrained historically within a system that are working against persons of color.
Yeah, I like that answer. Yeah. All right, so the sixth one. So when activists say defund the police, what is the end goal?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that one. So, because it's a hot topic out here. Defunding the police is based around really reallocation of the millions, sometimes billions of dollars that are being invested into the policing system. And so it's a reallocation to the actual root causes of crime. Because understanding that, for the majority of people, they're not just waking up wanting to go and commit a crime. It's out of necessity. It's out of a need because someone doesn't have. And so the root causes of crime and social determinants of health and addressing those. So moving millions of dollars and defunding the police so that they don't have so much money to move it into social causes that can help folks from getting to a place where they may need to commit crimes or that sort of thing. Addressing the root cause, really, to sort of save a ramble. And I would also add in there, too, is that there's also defunding the police, but then there's detasking of the police as well. Because, there's a lot of sort of conversation around police showing up to a mental health call, Are they the best people to do that?
No.
They even say they're not
Yeah.
the best people to do that. So, at the same time as we defund or reallocate funds,
Okay.
we can also detask and take away some of those responsibilities and just rethink.
Okay.
And I think that people are just sort of scared to think about something different because this is the system that we've always known.
Yeah. How do you think we can achieve racial reconciliation?
We have to think about it from, in my opinion, think about it from a way of reparatory justice. There's that conversation around reparations, but it's actually more than just money. And so I think of it in terms of reparatory justice, reparatory harm, and so that would kind of be the header, and then under that, certainly there should be some compensation in a lot of different cases, but then how are we repairing the harm for the communities that have been harmed and are continuing to be harmed for so long? And so achieving reconciliation, will I see it in my lifetime? Probably not. But I think that some of it has to start in the education system. Because again, if we tell the truth about the history in our education system, those young people who are then moving into society and the next prime ministers, the next mayors, those type of things, will actually have political and a policy sort of understanding that is rooted in the history the proper history that they've learned. And so, education, I think that there needs to be more political will in relation to solving these issues. And I think that it needs to become everyone's problem. Racism, systemic racism, has to become everybody's issue because often, factually black folks, persons of color, didn't create racism but are asked for the solutions. And so, providing a solution to something that I didn't create can become maddening sometimes. And so it needs to be also something that white folks just don't tolerate, because you'll never change the things that you tolerate. And so, that's kind of a long kind of ramble, but those are just sort of some of the ideas that I think about to kind of get to a place of achieving it. And I'd probably add one other thing in terms of recognition for the contributions that specifically black people have done. And I can speak for in Halifax for sure that people don't know that Jamaican Maroons built the fortress in Citadel Hill. There's actually no recognition there. That you wouldn't even know that. They built the streets. You wouldn't know that. And so the proper recognition, because often when history is taught, black people specifically, especially in schools, are shown in positions of inferiority, as if we didn't do anything. But the 3-light stoplight, did you know that was invented by a black man?
I didn't know that either.
And like our cell phones, we can use our cell phones because a black man invented the stuff to be able to use the phone. And so these types of things, if they're taught within our education system, and of course everywhere, but among all of the things that I've mentioned, that is one big thing in terms of receiving recognition and not only showing and not always showing persons of color, black people, in positions of inferiority, because psychologically that can do things that can be damaging to black people, and as well then what are white people thinking when they're only seeing black people in positions of inferiority? They're feeling superior because we're not getting any historical or current recognition for the things that we've done.
One last question that I might have is, what advice would you give to a white person right now watching this, moving forward with everything that's going on with the black community?
Doing nothing is not good enough. I've had many conversations with white folks who don't want to get involved because they don't want to make a mistake, they don't want to mess up, but I would rather somebody genuinely wanting to make change and trying to do something and then being corrected than just choosing to do nothing. And so we have to kind of rid of the collective complacency. And simplest example that people can get is that in any city, when it snows and the plows aren't out and they're not and the streets are not salted and whatnot, everybody is mad, everybody's upset, and they want to get that done quickly because it affects everybody. But racism doesn't affect everybody, and so they have to sort of make it your responsibility to want to make a change. And so advice would be, so educate yourself on histories that have happened. And people are like, where do I start? I'm like, well, if you want to order a pizza, what do? You Google pizza. So you want to learn some history, Google Black history. So education, reaching out, asking questions, getting involved. getting involved. That could be social media, that could be at your workplace, that could be in the community. But really the message I'm trying to get across is get involved. You have to make it your issue. You have to make it your problem, and take it as your responsibility to ensure that the people around you are doing well.